Okay, another video going along with some more on the biofeedback idea and communication. Got some notes here today. Hopefully this will go a little smoother. Got some more lighting up. You know, summer's here, kind of, pretty close. Close enough for me. Anyway, so I titled this, as you know, Comparing Neurological Network Operation and Structure to Other Biofeedback Operation and Structure. So a lot of this, I'm basing the neurological component on this research on a site called PNAS. It's called Flexibility of Thought in High Creative People, represented by percolation theory. So the percolation theory, like the name suggests, percolation is when something is diffusing through another medium, into a different, through a different medium or into a different medium, and there it shows up differently. The way that you reference things reveals them differently depending on the way you structure them and organize them, the medium through which or into which you're going to see what you're looking at, contextualizations, conditions. So percolation theory has spread into all areas now of human activity. It's in computer science, network theory, and in all social conditions, networks in computing, communications, neurological networks. I mean, it's in everything. It's in engineering, it's in math. And anytime you have, a force and a reactivity on a force, whether it's engineering, signaling in a system, communications, boy, it's just in everything. That's going to reveal to you something about the nature of the force and how it operates. Hope that makes sense. It's kind of some metacognitional type things. So, in the neurological network, the way this has been established now is they're using what they're calling direct indicators, which are noticing the response of words and concepts to someone's, say question or inquiry, and then how do they respond? So how diverse is their word usage and how diverse is their meaning, concept usage? So this is compared to what they used to use, which they called indirect measures. So that had to do with things like task switching. So they would see how someone does in one task, switch to another task, things like that. See how well that was considered sort of a cognitive flexibility. So that's been replaced. It's kind of interesting. You can see, how directly someone's talking about something. So we're talking about communication, relations, words, and concepts, right? So are they referring to things from a very, externally referenced, sort of a standardized way of referencing? Is it removed from an inner perspective? Like some essays, there can be lots of descriptive terms, descriptions of people and actions with very little inner reflection on them, inner perceptions, inner inquiries, inner revelations about the action characters and so forth. And so what you find is like a lot of descriptive stuff, like I read this essay. It was really bad. I read a lot of bad essays. They are bad too. It's not just my criticism. Anyway, well, a little bit. But anyway, so this one, okay, they were talking, the essay was about an impoverished town, a lot of teen pregnancy, a lot of broken relationships, stuff like that. Okay, so the women, the young pregnant girls, are struggling, with the lack of support. And there were some descriptive terms, sentences of the girls walking around, kind of listlessly, um, dangling a bottle or something, above a stroller or something. Descriptive, right? Not a lot about the girl's experience as she experiences it. Her the sense she had maybe of the despair, the inner sense of isolation or confusion or whatever. You see, modern literature, I found, has a lot more outer descriptiveness than inner reflection. That trend is increasing in literature. I get selections, like best of selections, best American essays, and they go back to, the 70s. You get every year. You can look at how the writing has changed, and it has changed. That's 40, 50 years of essays, and there's usually about, I don't know, like maybe 30 essays in a volume, and these have been carefully selected. They've been pre-published, so they made it into like a New Yorker or Atlantic or Guardian or something. Tells you anything about, anyway. So they got through that process. Then there was another very rigorous peer-reviewed process for getting in, the selected essays or the best sci-fi or the best, they have all the categories. So anyway, you can see a change in the way that people are living more in terms of an externally derived context than an internally derived context. And so I'm going to contextualize that. Let's compare that with the biological receptors real quick. Okay, so bioreceptors, we're talking about hormonal, other kinds of chemical signaling receptors. They function by their range, variability, adaptability in terms of their receptivity. Their receptivity is a function of their range capacity, their ability to pick up signals from this, signals at this level compared to signals at that level, compared to signals at that level, right? If they're not registering the different levels of the signals, they're not going to be responding accurately. Go into that. Okay. This is called receptor desensitivity. You may have heard of insulin resistance, cortisol resistance. Those are extremely common, but that happens in all the receptors. I mentioned before about these receptors in the carotid artery. You got 3 sets there. You got your volume and pressure. You got your baro, that's volume and pressure is the baro. Chemo is oxygen and carbon dioxide. And then you have your osmolality. That's your solutes, electrolytes in the blood, density of solutes, osmolality of the blood. Okay, so now these are very interrelated. So here's one complication that comes in, is that we have now these newer socially accepted, well, that's biological, heavier elements, the fats we produce today, okay, the sugars, the concentrated sugars we produce today, those are heavy, dense elements. They're going to make the pressure look higher. They're going to make the pressure, the volume look higher. They're going to make the osmolality look, see, is that high or low? See, osmolality, if it's dense, I think that's high. But anyway, so the volume and pressure, say the volume and pressure is reading due to the, what do you call it? The complication of these new substrates in the blood makes the volume and pressure look high, okay, from dense materials in the blood. But it's not high. It's a problem with the substrates in the blood are causing the problem. And so then the system's going to regulate itself to get rid of some of those things. But the system's going to tend to get rid of things like electrolytes and sodium first, because that's how it's designed. And it will also get rid of some excess sugars and fats, although that's going to be processed in the liver. That's going to depend on other things. So you're likely going to lose a lot of electrolytes first. And so, now in the case of desensitization, that's another problem. So I just want to finish. So the complication of the proper readings getting displaced by improper signaling. That's going to be important later. So, all right, up to you. Let's see. So the other problem, okay, now the desensitization. So say the receptor is getting desensitized, whether it be over time. This could be a macro or micro type problem. The macro sensitivities signaling in the whole system could be going down. It could be getting displaced and then getting desensitized by these other newer forms of signals that are complicating and displacing the actual readings that are there. It's going to come up later. Okay, so now let's say the receptors are desensitized from either of those causes, and then so now it's reading low, but it's not really low. It's just the receptor saying it's low. Okay, so then it's going to try to raise it, but it's not really low in the first place. So then you can see how some of these problems get going. Okay, let's. Is that okay? Let's shift that into some communication, neurological networks. So neurological networks, again, these as being represented in this study here. That's not the study, it's my notes. But anyway, it's called the flexibility of thought, high creative people by percolation theory. Okay, so they're talking about diversity of word usage, concept usage. So this means flexibility. So the flexibility in word usage, actually, that yields a diversity. Yeah. Let's see. How the diversity and determines how these variables are understood or characterized and contextualized in real-world situations. That is, how well do they represent and respond to real-world conditions? How well things contextualize into integrated networks. Now that's very interesting. If you look at the study, they got some great graphs there. You can just look the different groups of people and how they graph their word usage and concept usage. Some of them break off into separate little clusters. They're not interrelated at all. Other group, all interrelated. Very complex network, very complex design. Dense interrelated networks of usage and meaning. Very visually, you'll notice it right away. I should have printed that off, that little picture. That would have been cool. Anyway, you'll have to check it out. So back to biology. Chemical signaling of biofeedback mechanisms. How well are the signals relayed and transferred into the proper understandings of real-world conditions? That is, how are the conditions in the body, how are those real conditions being relayed and distributed, and it could be the feedback for so many things. It's better if you crinkle them up a little bit. It's so much easier to get things. See now, these are such an integrated, dense network of paper. Anyway, Okay. Real world conditions. Okay. It's just my notes. Real world conditions are defined as diverse. The real world's fairly diverse. Trees don't look too one leaf. There's not a predictable, standardized interval and symmetry between one leaf and another leaf. It's not related like that, but that's the way we think of our world in those terms. That's very removed from the way things actually are, if you haven't noticed. So the real world, irregular, diverse, spontaneous, and unusual. Although humans have been working very, very hard to eliminate these properties from their concerns and interests. That is, people like to have things more regulated for them, right? They want it done for them. They don't want to regulate themselves. Hey, that would mean an individually functional system. We don't have those anymore because they've been replaced by these kinds of socially conformity-based, cheap mechanized productions of words and meanings. And more so. Think that's going to increase? Has that been increasing for how long? 12,000 years, remember? From the agriculture, how that all started, I think. Anyway, okay. Now, in these systems, the neurological system, let's say, okay, the more regulated or compartmentalized the receptor, the greater the decline and deprecation of the functionality of the system. So you see neurological networks being compromised by isolated small clusters of context, meaning, and words and concepts. Break down. That's not resilient either. Those isolated neural, they're more fragile, right? Fragile really means diverse. Fragile means diverse. No. The opposite of fragile is diverse. Fragile means compartmentalized. Compartmentalized, narrow referencing, repetitive, reinforced, socially determined, cheap mechanized production of meaning and value and relations and communications. Is that getting more and more common? It's up to you. Okay. No, I'm just talking shit here. Okay. Okay. More on this. The more static and fixed and inflexible the words and meanings, the less ability they will be applied in relation to the variety of real world conditions. I try to go over these sentences. The more static and fixed the flexibility of the words and meanings, the less they will be able to apply in the relation to variety of real world conditions, right? Because real world conditions are diverse. If your understanding contexts are more static and singular, it's not going to provide a good relationship. Unless everybody becomes more singularly referenced, referencing things in the same ways, then you have large groups of people referencing things in the same ways, communicating, sensing, perceiving, the same ways. You got big oppositions there. Large groups of people functioning in these little ways. Is that making sense yet? Probably not. Okay, so we can apply this to value as well. As the applications of value have become more predictable, uniformly socially predicated, derived from prescripted conventions, that will be a narrower, less representative, and misapplication of value. So that then leaves out the intrinsic properties of value through what? Where does the intrinsic property of value come from? from Plato. Did he get it right? No. Did anybody in the Western world get that right? I'm sorry, no, they did not. Okay. We just get some workarounds to this problem as we learn that we have to widen our scopes of referencing and thinking capacities, more diverse, right? Anyway, but the value catches people's attention because there's supposed to be value in life, right? Today, a lot of people have a sense of meaninglessness, depression. So where? What? From a previous video? What? We know sharing. Sharing was the thing that brought about value. And what was the value? Relationship, connection. That was the value. The relationship and the connection, we know from older, more indigenous societies, was more important than the things that were being shared. The things that were being shared are not as valuable as the actual relationship with another person. Do you see how far we have diverged and excluded ourselves from these things? Hey, the Surgeon General's report last year was on the lack of social connection. Okay, that's becoming more of a problem than heart disease, cancer. What else do we have? Diabetes, obesity. All these things, right? Well, the social connection, relatability, communication is now catching up with us in a bad way. It's almost like it worked its way. It started biologically first. It worked its way all the way through our system, right? Now, it's totally consumed us through the entire thing, neurologically, emotionally, the limbic system, empathy, right? It's all very degraded. And how do people get meaning now? From similar people that think like them. That's where people get meaning now. Right? If you agree with me, yeah, okay, we're good. Yeah, our meanings are similar. Where did those meanings come from? From the who? The latest guru that came down with the latest paradigm of mass destruction. Yeah. Anyway, perpetuating a more and more isolated existence, such that everything people try to do to create more relationship only creates narrower and further, externally derived conditions that leave more and more of human design out of the picture. The actual human-to-human touch, human-to-human diversity, I wrote a little thing on the difference between pinball games and video consoles. A lot more interaction in a pinball game. Computer voices. I don't know. Now you have people that try to get intonation back in their voice, and they're so good at it, you almost believe it because it sounds like a fucking, I don't know what, an animal that's been shot. But no, there's other. I think a lot of people do contextualize things based on the form that it has. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the content is. If it fits the right picture, if the picture looks good, if the picture fits, how that should look, it's got the look of, a politician, or a look of a reporter, or a look of a professor, or a look, of, a politician, and they sound like that. They look alike. They sound alike. They probably smell alike. I know they do, because I smell their washing detergent, and their dryer sheets. You could smell from like 10 feet away. Oh, there's a journalist. Oh, there's a politician. There's a whole group of, anyway. I don't know. We got this here. The narcissist and the idealist function self-similarly. That means they exactly function the same. Self-similar. That's just a kind of emphasis of similarity. Self-similar. Narcissist and idealist function the same. Why is that? They both function from a very, very narrow referencing. The narcissist only sees things in a few ways, mostly theirs, their interest first. Okay? Same with the idealist. You know, mostly idealism is the way humans function, right? They have a few ideas. Hey, this is the way to understand things. Hey, this smells like the right meaning. Good thing I don't step in it. You know, but you know, do you know what I mean? Who cares, right? Fixed ideas are defined as ideas with less referencing capacity. A very simplistic way of relating to things that makes the self-recognition of the locked-in syndrome impossible to detect. Right? Once you get, and we are very far along this path after 12,000 years, right, of narrower referencing, right? Once you start getting locked into that, how are you going to know how self-referencing you are? How are you going to know? You are going to have to try to find some ways to explore other ways of referencing. And, you know, that takes a while. That's probably not going to be all that comfortable, right? You're going to be out of your comfort zone. I know I've spent a lot of time out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And that means you're out of other people's comfort zones as well, right? Because we're all functioning basically within the same comfort zone. That's word usage, concept usage, biofeedback mechanisms, all dysregulated. So we're all basically within that same referencing domain. So how are you going to get out of it? Well, if you're outside your own comfort zone, you're outside other people's comfort zone too. Hey, that's not a good situation. You know, the more and more people get meaning from this externally derived, socially produced thing, you know, and that's being, you know, more fragmented, less interactive, you know. So I want to tie this in. We're going to end this up here. God, it's been 27 minutes. Oh my God. Okay. So anyway, okay. Here's the thing. Here's one of my workarounds. I got a few. I try to get one for every domain. I need workarounds. So anyway, the Chinese have this work. They never needed a workaround because they had this. They stuck with this. Nothing has any meaning by itself. Things only have meaning by their relationship to other things. Nothing has any inherent existence. Things only have existence by their relationship to other things. Like millions and trillions and quadrillions of things, right? I mean, look at this. You know, look at all this stuff, man. You know what's in there? You don't want to know. Anyway, the Chinese. Amazing culture, really. Man. So, you know, their language works that way. They just are that way. Whereas kind of from the outside, you know, we're like, God, that's kind of cool. God, I wish I could do that. You know, it just becomes like a workaround for us Western people. I don't know. You know, it's a nice idea. That becomes a problem, though. Right? It just becomes another idea. Right? How do you functionally get to a closer understanding of things only exist by their relations to other things in a fragmented, isolated world? How are you going to get there? I don't know. Anyway, good luck with all that.